Hello and welcome to episode 8 of my Mage build guide. This time we're going to look at the best level 3 spells. I believe at level 5 you get your first level 3 slot, and depending on the type of mage you are, it's likely you're going to be restricted to just 2 or 3 level 3 spell slots, right up to level 7 or so. That means that by the time you get to the end of Baldur's Gate 1, you'll probably only have used these spells a little bit. But in Baldur's Gate 2, they will become your go-to bread and butter spells. So first up in my recommendations is Skull Trap. It has a cast time of 3, which is pretty reasonable. This floating skull is triggered when someone is in range of it. It's a smaller area of effect than a spell like Fireball, so it needs careful placement, but it does very high damage to multiple targets, and very few enemies will be able to resist the damage as well. Later into Baldur's Gate 2, you might use a sequencer to get multiple skull traps. But the reason I love this spell, it just gives you something you can prepare before a fight and use in the middle of a fight as well. Because you can draw enemies in towards it tactically. So it's a very powerful spell in Baldur's Gate 1. It also means it's quite useful into Baldur's Gate 2 as well. The next spell I'd like to recommend is Melf's Minute Meteors. This is fairly quick to cast, and you get a series of small magical stones that you can then throw. The damage on paper doesn't look great, but when you start to add it up, the way the game calculates the attacks makes this spell really effective. I would combine this spell as well with Haste or Improved Haste to make your wizard into a machine gun wizard. The reason this can work so well is the damage is so fast, and it has physical and magical damage combined, directed at specific enemies, so you can target people in groups. A fireball might seem great, but they often get wasted when enemies move or you hit your own party. These meteors, however, are likely to interrupt spellcasting as well, and if you have multiple mages, this could be a colossal amount of damage in a very short time. So I've used this spell right from the start of Baldur's Gate 2 to blast my way through the first few encounters. A spell I've just mentioned there is the third in my list, Haste. This spell is great at enhancing your whole party, speeding up their attacks and giving you an initiative bonus, faster movement, and it's helpful if one of your party gets hit with slow as well. It combines with other spells like I've just mentioned, Melf's Minute Meteors. The only problem is that you need to rest afterwards due to exhaustion, so remember that if you're going into a fight. But this can help in major fights to get the upper hand. Next spell is Protection from Fire. Fire damage is really common in Baldur's Gate, so that makes this spell the most useful protection spell. It makes you immune to all fire damage. Obviously it could get dispelled, so you need to keep an eye on it as well. Being immune to some of the most powerful spells and forms of damage in the game is priceless. The next spell is Remove Magic. It only hits enemies, but it can hit multiple targets in an area. This works on low level mages and removes all their buffs. It's really particularly useful against clerics when they've buffs to protect themselves. Breach will be better later at higher levels, but at level 3 this is the best spell to use for this purpose. And my final level 3 spell is Slow. This spell does what it says, it just slows your enemies. It's cast on a small area, but it can hit enemies only, so you can differentiate between your party and enemies. It casts quite quickly, and this makes it really much easier to hit enemies. It slows down the spellcasters, and if you combine it with other spells, like Greater Malison, for instance, you can give your enemy a massive penalty to save against your attacks. So it's really useful for enhancing your party and debuffing the enemy. And that is my list of level 3 spells.
Away with you!